is your usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful, cold Thursday morning down in Kampala, with almost 40 minutes past past the hour of 9 a.m. For our friends in the UK, please be mindful of the changes in time because now you're 3 hours behind Ugandan time. So that means as we speak, it's probably what? It's 6:40 a.m. UK time, not 7:40. Yes, not 7:40. Let me just confirm this down. Um, yes, it is 6:40 a.m. Over there in the UK. So we are 3 hours ahead of you guys. And over the last course of months, we had been only 2 hours ahead of you. So please take note of that variation, that an extra hour has been added to the tally or to the timeline. Now, personally, I do not know the terminology or the geography that causes that, whatever the case is. I do not know. I do not want to lie. But um, certainly, that change should be noted. I know perhaps maybe that's one of the reasons as to why we've not been having LFC, because of the changes in time. But I hope things will be different going forward. So I think that the same applies for our friends over in Spain. It should be the same case around there. Same applies for our friends in Turkey, Egypt, and things like that. So, but yeah, thank you so much for being part of the Football Tribe UG community. I do appreciate your time. I do appreciate the dedication that you give to this channel. For those of you that are really, really working to contribute towards our aim of achieving those 4,000 hours of watch time, uh, you know, by staying with us the longest, watching our content under the video section, under the live section, and everything being part of this broadcast. We do not take your love and support for granted. We do appreciate you a great, great, great deal. Then also, sorry, I couldn't join. Robert, I had training. That was LFC from a couple of hours ago, communicating. But it's all good, my brother. It's all good. Thank you for always dedicating the time to be with us whenever you can. For those of you that were part of last night's broadcast, lasted for about an hour and a half, as we did some form of watch along. The reason as to why I do not, okay, it's a watch along. For that Arsenal game against Brighton, while we followed up updates from the Italian Serie A, where Inter Milan were beating up against Fiorentina by 3-0. Of course, the entirety, the rest of the action from the Carabao Cup, Manchester City, against Swansea, Chelsea against Wolverhampton Wanderers, never speed over heading to that one. Newcastle up against Tottenham and things like that. So we'll be digesting those results. We'll be looking at what the draws did deliver for the quarterfinal. The reigning champions are still in it. And so some pretty strong teams. One giant was knocked out, as perhaps had been the expectation going into those fixtures last night. So I do not think it was too big a surprise for us to witness what we did witness from the night in as far as the EFL Cup is concerned. So we'll be digesting that. Then we will look at Arsenal's impressive October record, as those were the final games of October in as far as English football is concerned at the top level. So yeah, that's it from that regard. Anyways, so where do we start it from? I think there's only one place to start, and that's still in the EFL Cup, where we know that the reigning champions Newcastle are still in it. They are still in it, having beaten up against Tottenham Hotspur by 2-0. A brilliant header from Fabian Schär off Sandro Tonali's free kick, as well as as well as Nick Volkmadder's header. So those are two headed goals were enough to see Newcastle beat up against Tottenham Hotspur by 2 goals to 0. Like I said, Newcastle, the reigning champions, having beaten up against Liverpool by 2 goals to 1 in the finals last season. Then, in the other game of the night, let's start on the different fronts. Let's start with Manchester City. Manchester City had a scare when they went a goal down early into that game through a goal scored by Frank uh, Goncalo Franco in the 12th minute, but Jeremy Doku in the 39th minute was able to restore parity for the visitors. And then in the 77th minute, you had Omar Mamosh on target with Ryan Cheki providing the assist. Now the provider turned goal scorer in the 3rd minute of stoppage time at Manchester City, won that game by 3 goals to 1 to advance to the quarter-finals. Then there was a dramatic encounter unfolding at Molineux where Chelsea managed to come out on top, winning that game by 4 goals to 3. Chelsea took a 3-0 lead, but Wolves tried to fight their way back. Unfortunately, their fight was dented by their mistakes from the back because they again conceded. Anyways, but Jamie Gittens provided a burst of assists in the opening stanza as Andre Santos in the 50th minute and Tarek George in the 15th minute were on target for Chelsea there to give them an early 2-0 lead by the quarter hour mark. And then in the 41st minute, William Estaval stepped up and scored with Andre Santos providing the assist to make it 3-0. And going into halftime, you thought the tie was as good as done and dusted for Chelsea. But that may have never been the case because Wolves had other ideas, particularly in the second half, although they could not bring the game to a logical conclusion in their favor. But Arokodari did score to pull one back in as early as the 48th minute in the second half, while Wolfie scored in the 73rd minute to make it 3-2, and that's when you started thinking, now it's going to get nervous for this Chelsea side. But Chelsea, through Jamie Gittens, did score. Jamie Gittens scored a brilliant goal from the outside of the area. Ball, hits the inside of the post before ending up in the back of the net to make it 4-2. That was in the 89th minute, and the tie was as good as done and dusted. At least I thought to myself at the time. However, in the first minute of a stoppage time, Wolfie was at it again, forcing him. You should go watch that goal because the way Marco Correa tries to scramble to get that ball out of the net, but instead heads it into his own move, is just interesting to watch. But of course, for me, the goal of the tournament should go down as that goal by Jamie Gittens. But before we get to that, in between there, Chelsea had made changes that included the introduction of Liam Delap, who got a yellow card in the 79th minute, and about 10 minutes later, actually less than 10 minutes later, in the 86th minute, he was being sent off for a red card. So you can see Chelsea were down to 10 men, and it was 4-3 by the first minute of stoppage time, and we thought it was always going to be a nervous ending, which it was essentially. But Wolves were never could not find a way back at Molineux as Chelsea advanced to the quarterfinals of the EFL Cup with that 4-3 victory against Wolverhampton Wanderers. Excuse me. Anyways, briefly, then at the other game was, of course, at Anfield, where Liverpool welcomed Crystal Palace, a team that they were facing off for the third time this season, having met them in the Community Shield at Wembley Stadium, and they beat them by 3-2 on post-match penalties that proceeded a 2-2 draw. Then they met them at Selhurst Park in the Premier League and beat Liverpool by 2-1. Well, this time around, they made the trip to Anfield with a pretty starting with a pretty strong starting 11. and they managed to beat up against Liverpool by 3 goals to 0. Ismail Sarr and Jeremy Pino. Jeremy Pino did provide one of the assists to Ismail Sarr's goals, but those 3 goals were enough to see Crystal Palace through the next stage. Meanwhile, Nalo did receive a red card, so Liverpool finished the game with a man less. Anna Slot, contrary to my judgment and school of thought, he went with an entirely different team. He went with a very, very young team. Pitted their third choice goalkeeper, Freddie Woodman, the likes of Calvin Ramsey, Joe Gomez, Andy Robertson. Now, Andy Robertson and Joe Gomez are not young, must I admit. No, it's Freddie Woodman or Milos, but Milos Kakes. By the time you have Andy Robertson playing at centre back, that tells you Wataru Endo, playing alongside Nyoni in midfield. Then you had the likes of McAllister playing as behind the striker, who was Federico Chiesa in this particular case, Riongo Moha, Kieran Morris. I mean, you looked at that starting 11 and you feared for Liverpool. You literally knew, in comparison to what Newcastle had assembled, that included Jeremy Pino, Ismail Sarr, Daichi Kamada, Will Hughes, Daniel Munoz, Bona Sosa, Mark Gay, Walter Benitez, JD Covet, Lacrosse, and you knew that it was bound to be a very, very long night for Liverpool, who had, unfortunately, to finish the game with a manless following Nalo's red card, straight red card in the 79th minute. So that was the result from Anfield. Now, beyond the result, I think this, like I said, in the preview to this game, Liverpool needed to win for their reputation, for the manager's reputation, for purposes of trying to find momentum in a spell that has been quite horrible. But following that loss, it means they've lost 6 out of the last 7 games across all competitions. Their only victory coming against Eintracht Frankfurt in the UEFA Champions League last week in midweek. But also, I did mention that in a way that I would understand if he chose to rest all his senior players, which he literally did. When you look at that, you only had McAllister, Chiesa is not even a starter, Andy Robertson is not a starter these days, no, it's Joe Gomez. So you only had Milos Kakes and Alexis McAllister as the key starters from this Liverpool side that did feature in that game, or that got to start that game. And like I keep saying, Liverpool needed a victory in any form or shape. Unfortunately, it's not come. What that means is that practically you think Anna Slot went and threw those kids under the bus. And I'm not saying he shouldn't have played them, but playing all those kids against a team like Crystal Palace, who you've not beaten up against this season, was always going to be a daunting task. And he literally sacrificed the competition. I think looking at where they are as a team, looking at, and you see, the thing about this Liverpool squad is, I feel it's a bit narrow. I do not know what you guys think, but it's narrow in the sense that they do not have enough options every time they have 1, 2, or 2 injuries. Now, when they have those 1, 2 injuries, they can still assemble a very, very good starting 11. But it's the backup options that then become the issue. So, for example, in the absence of Alisson Ramsey-Becker, they have J.D. Nomadashvili. That defensive pair of Ibrahim Konate and Virgil van Dijk, if either of them is absent, Joe Gomez would come in. At left back, Milos Kakes and the Robertson, that's all good. Right back, Conor Bradley, Frimpong, good. You look at that midfield and you start to think yourself, in the absence of Gravenberch, somehow Wataru Endo is not trusted enough. And it's something that we talked about at the start of the season. And I said, if you had Ryan Gravenberch out for quite a period of time, do you think the manager can trust Wataru Endo to carry the club through for a period of 2 to 3 months? Playing in that role, and it doesn't seem to be the case. So Just is an option, but is an option that is not well trusted. Then you go forward. In the absence of Alexander Isak, who is been out through injury, you have Hugo Ekitike, which is all good. But then once you want to withdraw Hugo Ekitike, then the question becomes, who then do you bring on? So the options look limited in that sense. Then when you have Mo Salah, you have Cody Gakpo on the right and left wings respectively. On the bench, what you have Riongo Moha, Federico Chiesa. Chiesa is good. Ngomoha, still a youngster, 17 years of age. Could he rise to the occasion? Yes. Can we demand of him the same things week in, week out? I certainly do not think so. I certainly do not think so. I certainly do not want to believe so. So, in essence, there's a feel of shortness to that Liverpool squad, and perhaps this particular fixture, if anything, showed us that. But anyways, they found Crystal Palace found a way to win. And like I touched on yesterday, I did say that having won the FA Cup the previous campaign, Crystal Palace want to put themselves in that sort of frame where they really, really compete for these cup competitions. I still stressed further that for mid-table teams and the teams below, is that they are always going to fight for these cup competitions because that's their biggest chance and opportunity or direct path to a piece of silverware during the course of the season. Because in any case, they're not going to win the league title. They know that. We know that. So the opportunity comes in the FA Cup, the Carabao Cup, and if you have an opportunity to play a bit of continental football the way Crystal Palace do, maybe you may fancy your chances in the UEFA Conference League, or as Nottingham Forest are and Aston Villa in the UEFA Europa League in that sort of sense. But particularly for Crystal Palace, Oliver Glasner needs to or wants to continue building onto that CV. As he saw Crystal Palace win the FA Cup last season, it wouldn't hurt for them to add another piece of silverware in the form of the Carabao Cup to their collection. And then also you have a team like Newcastle, who are the reigning champions of the competition, who are saying, yeah, we won our first major title for the first time in 71 years or 70 years. It wouldn't hurt if we won it back to back. So they are still in the fight for it. Anyways, so those were some of the results. The other result, finally, from the fourth round of the EFL Cup was Arsenal beating up against Brighton by 2-0. Ethan Nwaneri, both goals came in the second half. Ethan Nwaneri and Bukayo Saka in the 57th minute and the 76th minute, respectively, were enough to see Arsenal close to victory. Now, if you did not watch this game, you may think that it was another walkover for Arsenal. It was far from that. In the first half, Brighton created lots of chances. They just could not put them away. They forced Kepa Arrizabalaga into making 3 saves in the first half. And when you look at the statistics in terms of shots on target, you will see that Brighton had more. They had as many as 6 compared to Arsenal's 5. But I think 5 or 3 of those came in the first half, where they created their best goal scoring opportunities but could not capitalize on them. They had 7 shots off target. That's for Brighton. And then this tells you what I'm trying to drive home, that it was no walkover for Arsenal, while the Arsenal were overly slightly dominant in the opening half when it came to possession, because they edged that one, I think, to the tune of about 52% compared to Brighton's 48%, but you can see the margins were still small. But overall, it was a 50-50 in terms of overall ball possession, according to statistics from Live Score. So then in the second half, Arsenal looked better or sharper in front of goal as compared to their counterparts in Brighton. They looked threatening in set pieces, but that was after Gabriel Magalhaes came on for clearing hiccup, and Mikel Merino was playing up front as the target man because of the changes that had happened in midfield. But again, when you look at Arsenal's setup, it did not differ much from what we had anticipated or predicted that it would be. Kepa Arrizabalaga and goal, Mosquera alongside Hinkap, Ben White, Mazlou Skeri completed the back four. In midfield, you had Christian Nogard and Mikel Merino, pretty much like we predicted. Ethan Nwaneri, Ebelechi Eze, Max Dorman, and Andre Anos. Now, Andre Anos was a huge surprise for me. I did not expect him in this one. but the rest was all okay. Of course, Brighton themselves came a little bit lightweight. They also made some changes to their starting 11, which meant that it wasn't as good as that of Arsenal, or it was always going to be difficult for them to edge out Arsenal. But like I said, had they taken their chances, predominantly that the ones they created in the first half, perhaps as I stated here, we'll be talking about an entirely different result. We'll be debating a full, a different game altogether. But in the end, Arsenal sort of fizzled out the damage, they controlled damage. What I found wanting in that particular case, particularly for the side of Arsenal, was how quickly or easily Brighton were able to glide through their midfield that had Mikel Merino, Ebeleche Eze, and Mikel Merino, Christian Nogard, and Ethan Wajiri. But overall, it's something that we did not discuss it here, but I did stress it in a different forum on TikTok, on a TikTok live. You can, by the way, check us out at Football Tribe UG on TikTok. So, I was in that forum and I was saying maybe the question for Mikel Arteta will be that Max Dorman and Ethan Wanyeri do not do the pressing well in terms of helping the team to win the ball back. And but that was true for Max Dorman in terms of, he has that thing of looking over his shoulders every time he loses the ball, to see how his teammates react. Not that he reciprocates how they react to it, but but he's a youngster trying to learn his trade. Ethan Wanyeri will sometimes do it, sometimes he will look up as others do it. So that's the reservation that I had. And I think that was important for how Brighton were able to break the lines through that midfield and get onto the Arsenal backline. Arsenal had a bit of scare in the second half. Christian Mosquera sort of had the lapse of judgment, took too long on the ball, considered possession, and he was bailed out by a block from Pierre Hincap, who I thought had a brilliant game last night in Hincap there. Then away from that, from the result itself, Arsenal, proceeded to the quarterfinals. But I want us to talk briefly about Arsenal's record in as far as the month of October is concerned, because it's been nothing shy of impressive. 6 games played, 6 wins, 6 clean sheets kept, 12 goals scored, 0 goals conceded. I mean, that's been impressive in as far as the month of October is concerned. And in case you're wondering, one would say, maybe they came up against lightweight opponents. That's not the case. They they started the month with Olympiacos at home in the UEFA Champions League, won that game by 2 goals to 0. Maybe the argument you could make is that Arsenal have played 5 of the 6 games at home. That's a huge advantage, that 5 of those games have been at home. And that's why their next 3 games are going to be away from home. They'll play away to Burnley, away to Sunderland, and away to Slavia Praha in the UEFA Champions League in their next course of action. But nonetheless, they still won. Then subsequent to the Olympiacos game, they beat up against West Ham by 2 goals to 0. Then they went away to Fulham and won by 1 goal to 0. That was at Craven Cottage. They returned home and beat up against Atletico de Madrid by 4 goals to 0 in the UEFA Champions League. Remained home, beat up against Crystal Palace by 1 goal to 0. That was in the Premier League. And then yesterday, beating up against Brighton and Hove Albion by 2 goals to 0 at the Emirates Stadium. So you look at that run of results, and I think one of the most noticeable things here, if you want to add against it or find concern with it, is that 5 of these games were at home. But the idea or the fact that Arsenal kept all 6 clean sheets, I think is very, very impressive. Very, very impressive when you look at the kinds of opponents that they came, are against. Then when you look at their goals tally, which isn't bad because there's only 2 1-0 victories. That's against Fulham and against Crystal Palace. We're talking about teams that practically played roadblocks against this Arsenal side. They sat back, looked to catch Arsenal on the counter, and yet Arsenal still found their way to win through set pieces, of course. Speaking of set pieces, yesterday they were not a factor, really, because both of Arsenal's goals came right out of open play. So you're not going to, sing like a canary. When you look at that first goal, the way they scored it, of course, Ethan Wanyuri, wrapping his boot around that ball. The flick that, the back heel that Mikel Merino plays to Mazzucchi is just impressive to watch. Combination of good interplay, I think, between Ebeleche Eze and Mikel Merino, Mazzucchi, and then, of course, Ethan Wanyeri that buries the ball into the back of the net. Then when you look at their second goal, a brilliant run by Jurgen Timber, gets to play through Anos, who was the target man for the Arsenal at the moment. His attempt on goal is set by the goalkeeper, but the rebound falls in the direction of Bukayo Saka, who buries it into the back of the net, and they win that. So it ends 2-0. So it's been a perfect match for Mikel Arteta and his side. All credit goes to him in regards to what he's built there. I think I stand to be corrected, but I think they are the first team in English football to win all their games in the month of October without conceding. So, brilliant. So on the match into the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup, they are fourth on the UEFA Champions League block, and they deal with the pie in as far as the Premier League table is concerned. So, anyways, let's move on to the quarterfinals of the Carabao Cup because the draws were conducted yesterday, and first in was Arsenal, and they will be at home against Crystal Palace. That fixture will be, or these fixtures will be played on the 16th of December. That's the expectation. 16th of December. That means in November we shall not have any fixture from the EFL Cup. As one would have loved or would have expected. So then the other fixture will be between Cardiff City against Chelsea still, and then Manchester City will take on Brentford. Keith Andrews perhaps may have hoped for a different goal, but it doesn't come any harder than facing off with Manchester City at the Etihad Stadium. And then Newcastle, the reigning champions, will be once again at home against Fulham. Remember, over the weekend they did beat up against Fulham, but by 2-0. By 2-1 over the weekend. So that's the run of the quarterfinals that will be coming your way in as far as things are concerned. So that's the wrap from the Carabao Cup. Arsenal have had a spectacular month. I do not know if there is anything you can critique of their performances, unless you're nitpicking to say, you do not like set pieces and things like that, which are essentially part of the game. When you go back to the 80s, 90s, set pieces were a thing, and teams were really, really drilling through it. Then we had phases of tic-tac football, building from out of the back, which seemed to bore some people because goalkeepers were making one too many mistakes, defenders were getting caught out of play, and teams were conceding, and people criticized that. Then Pep Guardiola, like I mentioned yesterday, that I, for one, sometimes they would pass the ball into Boado, and you got bored, and people complained about that. Now, they are the same people literally who got bored by that are complaining that set pieces are taking the steam out of the game, that they are killing the game, that it's no longer free flowing. I mean, some people just want to eat, to have their cake and eat it at the same time. So you cannot argue one time that tic-tac football can be boring sometimes, and then you also argue set pieces are boring. I know you want a blend of, maybe a slight blend of both, but you get, like I said, teams will play to their advantage. Managers assess games and find ways to win games, and those are the strategies that they choose to deploy, and so be it. So in case you're one of those are pained by how teams set up, by how teams go about things, then you're going to be in for a long ride in as far as this season is concerned. But yeah, I found the action from the Carabao Cup very, very interesting. but let's leave it at that. Last night there was action from the Italian Serie A, where AC Roma beat up against Parma by 2 goals to 1, while Como beat up against Hellas Verona by 3 goals to 1. Juventus were at the end of a 3-1 victory against Udinese. Two penalties have got from that one. Dusan Vlahovic scoring one and the other, I think, by Kenan Yildiz. And then Bologna and Torino shared the spoils in a goalless draw, while Cremonese beat up against Genoa by 2 goals to 0. Inter Milan put three past Fiorentina as they continued with their, good run. Hakani Chanadolu, Sochi were the goal scorers. Chanadolu are picking a breast in that one, one of them being a penalty. What those results mean on the standings from the Italian Serie A is that you have two teams tied at the top. That's Napoli leading the pile with 21 points, 7 victories out of 9 games, 2 losses. Same applies for a second place AC Roma, same number of points. Then in third place is Inter Milan with 6 victories out of the opening 9 fixtures and 3 losses. So that puts them at 18 points, as AC Milan in fourth place who have 5 victories, 3 draws and 1 loss so far this season. Then in fifth place is Cesc Fabregas' Como with 4 victories, 4 draws and 1 loss from the opening 9 fixtures, which puts them at 16 points as well. In sixth place is Bologna with 15 points. Juventus comes 7th with 15 points. Cremonese 14 points. Atlanta with 13 points, and Udinese complete the top 10 with 12 points. As we speak, the teams in relegation zone are Genoa with 3 points, Fiorentina with 4 points, Pisa with 4 points. So you can imagine, David De Gea Quintana and Moises Keane's team in Fiorentina will need to do more and more to make sure that they do not slip further beyond that. We're talking about Atlanta. Atlanta are currently 9 on the La Liga table. They are under the charges of Ivan Juric there. So the cognizant of that fact. Then, of course, there were games in Germany in the German DFB Pokal Cup. Then Copa del Rey matches were also raging on. But more importantly, in the League One was also ongoing, where Le Havre beat up against Brest by 1-0. Lorient shared the spoils with PSG. Metis beat up against Lens by 2-0. Nice beat up against Lille by 2-0. Marseille and Angers shared the spoils in a 2-2 draw, while Monaco beat Nantes by 5-3. Lyon and Paris FC ended in a 3-3 draw, while Strasbourg beat up against Auxerre by 3-0. And then Toulouse shared the spoils with Stade Rennes in a 2-2 draw on the evening. When you look at the standings from the French League One, PSG lead the pile with after 10 games played, 6 victories, 3 draws and 1 loss. That loss came in a 1-0 defeat against Olympique de Marseille. In second place is AC Monaco with 20 points, 10 games played, 6 victories, 2 draws and 2 losses. While Olympique Marseille comes third with 19 points, as well as a 4th placed Strasbourg. Lyon, Lens also equally have 19 points, occupying the 5th and 6th place respectively. In 7th place is Lille with 17 points, and Nice 8th with 17 points, Toulouse 9th with 14 points, and Stade Rennes with 12 points in 10th place. Of course, the bottom two are Metis, Auxerre with Lorient occupying that place above relegation in 16th place. So, that's what did transpire on the side of the French League One. So, with the Carabao Cup done, of course, we get to build up towards match day 10 of the Premier League that will run from Saturday until Monday. Monday Night Football will deliver Sunderland between Sunderland at home against Everton. But on Super Sunday, you will have Manchester City up against Bournemouth, while West Ham will take on Newcastle. Difficult game there for for West Ham as well as Manchester City would have an easy tie against Bournemouth. Bournemouth can sometimes be a giant killer. But again, over the weekend, like I told you before, there won't be any early kickoffs. All games will kick off at 6 p.m. East African time. That means it will be around 3 p.m. UK time. 3 p.m. UK time. So please take note of those changes in the timeline. But on Saturday, like I said, no early kickoff, but we'll have 5 games kicking off at 6 p.m. And those 5 games will include Brighton and Hove Albion against Leeds United. Burnley will be at home against Arsenal. Crystal Palace will entertain Brentford, while Fulham will take on Wolverhampton Wanderers. Manchester United will be away to Nottingham Forest, while at 8:30 p.m., which means that will be around 5:30 p.m., Chelsea will make the trip to Tottenham Hotspurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, while Liverpool at 11 p.m., which will be 8 p.m. Yeah, 8 p.m. UK time, Liverpool will be at home against Aston Villa. Now, like I said, Liverpool's next 3 games are going to be very, very difficult games. They have Aston Villa over the weekend. The advantage for them is that 2 of these games are going to be at home. After Aston Villa, they take on Real Madrid in the UEFA Champions League. And then on Super Sunday, that will be, I think, the 9th of November, they'll be playing up against Manchester City before we go for the November international break, which will be the last international break for this particular year, 2025. And then we'll have to wait until sometime in March 2026 for there to be another international break. And yeah, it's we've given our feelings and your opinions about the international break and what we think of it. But take nothing away from it. It's a bit of a necessary evil. And then, like I said, do not, guys, forget in December we are about literally almost 2 months away, less than 2 months away from the Africa Cup of Nations. That means in December 2025, I think on December 21st, that's when the Africa Cup of Nations is expected to kick off. If you're a Liverpool fan, please expect Mo Salah to be away for AFCON with the Egyptian national team. If you're a Manchester United fan, please expect Brani Bomo and Amadou Diallo to be away for, the Africa Cup of Nations with Cameroon, and I do not know who does a Diallo feature for. But if you're Chelsea, I do not think you have anything to worry about. If you're Newcastle, I do not think you have anything to worry about. Maybe yes, if you're Newcastle, Yohan Wissa could be away. Yet ever since he was signed, he's been out to injury and things like that. Arsenal do not have anything to worry about. Trying to look around amongst the big teams to see who will be missing some players during the Africa Cup of Nations that will be played between December 2025 and January 2026. So yeah, those we already know what the AFCON groups look like. We already know what the groups look like in terms of the, I think, about 6 ports there. You do have okay, just for purposes of recap, but in Group A you have the host, of course, Morocco. You have Comoros, Mali, and Zambia. In Group B you have Egypt, Angola, South Africa, Zimbabwe. Group C you have Nigeria, Tanzania, Tunisia, Uganda. You have Benin. In Group D, Botswana, DRC, Congo, and Senegal. Then in Group E you have Algeria, Burkina Faso, Equatorial Guinea, Sudan. Then in Group F you have Cameroon, Gabon, Ivory Coast and Mozambique. Football Royale says, bro, hi Football Royale, how have you been? Um, it's very, very early in the morning. It's 19 minutes past 10 a.m. That means it's 19 minutes past 7 a.m. UK time. I think that should be the same case for our friends in uh, across some major countries in Europe. So please take note that instead of Uganda being 2 hours ahead now, it's now 3 hours. That's very, very something noticeable that you need to take note of. The situation doesn't change, I think, until what, tomorrow, thereabout, or even after that. I don't remember practically well, but only March. I do not. But yeah, that's it for me. It's been a pleasure being this with you guys for the last 40 minutes. I do not know, but I'll make inquiries with our UK audience if we need a readjustment in some of our programs to see whether timelines will suit them. Because I know now when I come at 9:30, which is 6:30 a.m. over there, majority are still sleeping, and we can't fault them for that. But anyways, it's been a pleasure. Have yourselves a blessed day. Bye bye for now.